Who was George Ivanovich Gurdjieff? He was a writer, a musician, a master of dances, and a mystic. It is impossible to limit him to any single category. He was born and raised in Armenia, an area rich in diversity, ethnically, religiously, and culturally. These various influences stimulated his naturally inquisitive mind. At the age of 20, he joined a group of friends known as the Seekers of Truth on a pilgrimage of self-knowledge to discover an answer to his question as to the meaning of man's existence. The group's journey of over 20 years took them from Egypt through Central Asia to Tibet and India. He visited hidden monasteries, temples, and esoteric schools, where he was introduced to many different forms of music, movement, and dance, Buddhist and Sufi, Gnostic and Essene, and many others. The purpose of these practices being to expand consciousness and transmit universal laws which govern all of existence, including the lives of human beings. On his return, it became his mission to reveal these ancient practices to the modern world. He also developed his own music and movements, creating a synthesis between traditional Eastern rituals and the scientific knowledge of contemporary Western thought.
C'était un danger.
He was a danger, a true menace, a real threat to one's tranquility, to the little idea we have of ourselves, to the comfortable repertoire in which we usually live. But when the threat appeared, it was like a ditch to get over, a doorstep to get over. We were helped to get past it by his very presence. Going through this threat, immediately one felt a great sense of well-being, of having dropped one's masks and the weight of one's self-images. One felt suddenly free.
Laisser tomber le poids de ces images et on se sentait soudain libre. Je voudrais traduire l'impression que j'ai ressentie auprès de lui.
I'd like to relate the feeling I got around him, the impression that emanated from him, the impression of permanence. He was always calm, contained, whatever the circumstances, whether it was dramatic, as it often was, whether he was going to the market or with his students, or at the table with many guests. There was always the same density of presence, simultaneously watching himself and the entire world without judgments. It was contagious. When in contact with this tranquility, one had the impression of seeing things from a distance, quietly, calmly.
Tout à coup, une tranquillité, oui.
What exactly are the movements? This question can only really be answered by direct experience and practice of them. Nevertheless, one can say that they lead to attaining and maintaining a state of presence to oneself and to life. There is such a movement in life where the pressure is so strong, the flood of events and impressions so powerful, that it is difficult to know who we are, where we are going, and the true nature of our inner reality. The movements, an essential part of Gurdjieff's teachings, are a way to re-establish contact with the inner, while at the same time being involved with outer activities. Once you are centered, you can move to the periphery, but you will be totally different. You will not be the periphery. You will remain the center. In the midst of deep agitation, there is a center where stillness remains. For many, the first impression of the movements will be a revelation, because they are radically different from anything they will have seen before in the world of dance. In day-to-day life, we utilize a limited number of postures and movements in accordance with a certain repertoire of roles and functions that we are playing, mostly without being aware of it. Moving, feeling and thinking are deeply connected. For each gesture, there is a corresponding inner state, and vice versa. So most of our movements are automatic, as are our emotions and thoughts. There exist certain gestures, attitudes, connected with more refined states of consciousness. Practice of the movements, utilizing these gestures, breaks the circle of automatism, which normally prevents us from experiencing who we really are. The movements consist of simple gestures, but are executed in an unusual order or using unusual combinations of rhythms and body parts. One effect of this is to harmonise the right and left sides of the brain. Suddenly, after much effort and concentration, the body will begin to perform the movements consciously, harmonising the torso with the legs, the head with the heart, the hands with the feet, bringing a feeling of inner joy, lightness and ease. This experience of joy comes from having made real contact with the self. This process happens through both attention and relaxation. At times, an inner voice will tell you that a given muscle is too tense or too loose. As the work progresses, you will learn how to gather and contain energy. You will learn how to economize your movements, both in the practice of the dances and in your day-to-day life, developing more clarity, simplicity, and judiciousness. A quiet, deep stillness, an active and conscious stillness at the core of all movements, and non-action at the core of action. And the question, how can I move out of stillness without disturbing it? The movements are an exceptional opportunity to develop attention and the connection between body and consciousness. First, the attention is focused on various parts of the body, performing the different sequences. Then, the attentiveness is diffused throughout the entire body. Finally, a more refined quality of watchfulness arises as we become aware of ourselves as a whole. From being exclusive, attention becomes inclusive of my body, my being, the other people around me, the space and the music. The movement comes through one, but is not made by one. We have to be very aware of our bodies, not only of the outer form of our movements, but also of the energy which puts our bodies into action, the impulses at the source of this energy, and deeper still, the archetype, the force of the movement. movements are part of an objective scientific approach aimed at developing and harmonizing the three centers: physical, emotional, and intellectual. All three are involved and integrated during the practice of the dances. We can learn through this process to take distance from the chain of unconscious associative thought patterns that often run our lives, and connect with that part of the mind which is intelligence and clarity. For example, the use of counting.
2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
Or the repetition of certain words and letters. Once the centers are connected in us, something higher connects and gives birth to a true feeling in which there is joy, love, force, harmony, and peace. I see myself. I see the others. I see what is, very clearly, without reaction. Slow movements bring us to a state of receptivity and vulnerability. Fast, vigorous movements give expression to the force of affirmation, not the affirmation of the ego, but of the vital force. The force of existence to which we have opened during the slow movements. Your hand opens and closes, opens and closes. Your deepest presence is revealed during the process of contraction and expansion, effort and letting go. The path of the warrior and that of the lover, where the two meet and merge like the two wings of a bird. Our ordinary states are connected with a certain quality of energy, which has its own characteristics. A relaxed and attentive body, a light heart, a mind for a moment free from worries and inner toil. And it may happen that the participant becomes an antenna for a finer quality of energy to be received. A vibrant, alive state, and he is there without interfering. Maturity happens when you understand and embrace the concept of discipline. This means practicing the dances, repetition with enthusiasm, and a spirit of investigation. We adopt the attitude of a curious child. What happens when I do it this way? What effect does that have? Every mistake is an opportunity to learn. Gurdjieff has said, "A man alone can do nothing." The participants develop a sincere, warm and trusting connection to one another, a communion of presence deeper than the meeting of personalities.
When you are being corrected, sense the new position. Take a moment to internalize it.
So good.
So good.
And I try.
Good. Rajiva.
Practicing the movements opens the door to a new way of being, deepening our sensitivity to beauty, silence and stillness, leading to deep joy and fulfillment, a more awakened state which has the power to transform us in our daily life. Amiyo was invited to teach the movements by her master, Osho, a contemporary Indian mystic. For many years she was a dancer, choreographer, teacher of dance and dance therapist in Osho's commune and throughout the world. She has been using her experience of movement, dance therapy, and psychocorporal techniques to direct public performances of the dances, to share the effects of this work with a greater audience. For the last few years, Gurdjieff Movements have been opening to the world at large, a world in greater need than ever for more consciousness. Participating in this work, people are discovering the sacred in their daily life. Practice of the movements is transferred into conscious gestures, conscious attitudes, conscious acts. Amiyo says, "I have spent my whole life searching for my true self through dance. I saw the Gurdjieff movements for the first time in the film Meetings with Remarkable Men. Something in them caught my attention and I was immediately drawn to them. What was mesmerizing was not so much the beauty of the movements, but a space beyond that beauty, the inner state of presence that was expressed on the faces of the dancers. Here was a dance process that obviously involved not just the whole of the body, but also the whole of the being. A dance was not created, rather, dancers were created through it. The performers seemed to be animated by forces inherent to the movements themselves. I sensed that each outer movement was just the tip of the iceberg, the inner content creating a course for life. Finally, I would have the opportunity to experience my longing for a meeting, a merging of dance and meditation.